This is Excel 2016, Module 4, Part 3. In this video, we will be focusing on working with a clustered column chart. So let's go ahead and get into our workbook called Backspace that we have been using for our charts. You can see here the pie chart that we just created. And now we're going to go over to our projected cash flow. And we're going to be using this data to create a clustered column. Now it's important to make sure that you have included the loan repayment amount of $20,000 in each year. Otherwise, your data will look different than the data I have. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select some non-adjacent ranges. We need to include A4 through a K4. That will give us the years. Then we're going to choose total revenue in row 13, as well as total expenses in row 21. So if you do not have the $20,000 a year in that loan repayment, make sure you put that in now because it will affect your data. So we're going to start out by selecting A4 through K4. Whoops. A4 through K4. Then holding down the control key, you want to select the row for total revenue. Then you also want to select the row for total expenses. This time we are going to use the Insert tab, and we're going to choose Recommended Charts. This is a nice feature that Excel added in release 2010 or 2013. I can't remember. I think it was 2013. Basically what it does is it looks at your data and it gives you some suggestions as to how you could chart that data. So you can look at the various options and pick the one that you think is going to illustrate what you're going for the best. So we are going to choose clustered column, the very first option, and click OK. The first thing we're going to do is choose the chart styles. Now you will recall we could come into this chart styles button and we could scroll down and choose style 14. Another thing you could do is choose the gallery of styles up here on the ribbon and find the one that says style 14 and you could choose it there. It is going to be the same either way. Now you can see that this is covering a lot of our data, and so we're going to have to move this. But what we want to do is we want to move the chart so that it is a part of our financial summary worksheet. So we can't move it by hovering over it and getting the cross with the arrows, because that moves it within the worksheet that we're currently on. If we want to move it to a different worksheet, you must use this Move Chart button. On the Move Chart button, you can create what's called a chart sheet, and that's a sheet that is just for charts. or you can move it as an object in an existing worksheet. Okay, we're going to choose the worksheet called Financial Summary. And when you click OK, it will move it over to that worksheet. Once it's there, then we can use the technique that we used in the last video to move it to the location and then resize it. So what we want is this chart to begin in cell E4, and then we want it to be resized to end in L20. So the first thing I'm going to do is get so that I can see row 20. Then I'm going to hover over my chart area till I see the cross with the arrows. That indicates that you are moving something. So I'm going to hold down my mouse and drag it up so that it starts in E4. Then I'm going to use the resizing handle to make sure that it ends in L20. So again, if you're only moving it on the worksheet that you're on, you use the cross with the arrows. If you're trying to move it to a different worksheet, you must use the Move Chart button. Okay, so the first thing I'm looking at is it did give us a chart title, but it doesn't know what we want to call it. So it just calls it chart title. The easiest way to change that is to click on the title and then begin typing the text that you want it to read. So I want this to read projected, and notice it's not visible on the chart yet, but it is up in the formula bar. You can see it up here. Projected revenue and expenses. When I hit enter, it will redisplay that onto the chart title. Now if I want to change the font or the size or the font color, I can do that on the Home tab, just like we did when we were formatting cells. So I am going to change the font to be Calibri Light, which is the headings font. And the size is 16 is fine. I'm going to change the color, however, to be green. Whoops, wrong color box. Font color, green, accent 6, darker, 25%. The next thing I want to look at are the axes. So if I want to format the vertical axis, I'm going to double click on that vertical axis. And notice I get an axis formatting pane. Right now, the bounds say 0 and the 2.5E6 is 2.5 million. Excel put those in as defaults, and so I can change the units and those bounds if I choose to. So what I want to do is I want to change the major units from 500,000 to 250,000. Notice what happens is at every 250,000 now, I get a number and a line. The minor units, it allows me to add lines, which you'll see later, but it does not use numbers on those minor breaks. Let's go ahead and close this access. The next thing we're going to look at are the grid lines. So I'm going to click on the chart elements, and you'll notice there are grid lines. Let's scoot mine over a little bit so we have more room to work. On the grid lines, you're going to click the right arrow, and you'll notice that right now it says I want to have primary, major, horizontal. If I also wanted to add vertical, I could check that box and it would become more like a grid. You'll notice if you were to check the minor, you can see them very lightly, that it's adding lighter lines for each of those minor units. I'm not going to check that one. I'm going to close the chart elements, and you can see it made more of a grid line. And now I'm going to look at how we can change our width of the columns. We're going to click on one of these sets of columns and double click to open up the formatting pane. I am going to choose the formatting pane, and you'll notice there's an item here called gap width. The gap width controls how much white space there is. So if I change that from 100% to 200%, you can see that it increased the white space, and so by doing that, I shrunk the column sizes. Series overlap helps with the overlap between the columns. Okay, so if you want to change your column size, these are the things that you're going to change, these two buttons. Now if I wanted to change the fill colors of the chart area and the plot area, I'm going to go ahead and close this format pane, and I'm going to click on white space. Now again, if you want to verify that you have the correct thing selected, go to the Format tab and verify that it says chart area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in the chart area on the Home tab with a fill color. I'm going to choose green accent 6, lighter 60%. When I did that, it's very challenging now to see the area where the items are. So let's go back to Format and make sure that what we've selected is plot area, because it's very easy to click on some line accidentally and not have the plot area but have a data series or a grid line. You want to make sure that this says plot area. We can also use the shape fill here. We are going to use the shape fill and set the color of the plot area to white. Now you can see all the grid lines and the plot very clearly, but yet the background color of our chart area is the green. So that covers our clustered column. So we're going to save this, and the next video will cover a stacked column chart.